Hi, today's story is about a man who found six rolled carpets just like that on the street, and when he unwrapped them, he was shocked because he found something really mysterious in there. So let's read the story. Glenn Harper didn't plan to take anything the day he pulled six rolled carpets out of a dumpster behind a shopping center. He wasn't breaking a lock or climbing a fence, and he wasn't doing it for a viral video. He was a 74-year-old retired Navy electrician with stiff hands and shrinking cushion, and those rolls were sitting in a plain view in Savannah, Georgia, wrapped in dusty plastic and tied with a twine like someone had packed them for storage, then dumped them in a hurry. What stopped him wasn't the size, it was the weight. A normal rock feels dead. These felt loaded, like they were hiding something solid, then shifted when he tested the roll with his palm. Spring had backed Glenn and his wife, Marla, into a corner that didn't like talking about. Marla's sister needed a rehab deposit that insurance wouldn't cover up front, and the family kept saying, "You two are the steady ones," like steady meant unlimited. Glenn had started taking small repair jobs again, outlets, sailing fans, porch lights, anything he could finish in an afternoon without wrecking his knee. Marla worked extra hours at the church thrift room, sorting donations and pricing jackets while trying not to think about their own medical costs stacking up. They weren't chasing riches, they were trying to help family without draining the emergency money they'd built for their own late years. The money that kept them from fear when a roof leaked or a prescription changed. The carpet showed up during a plain errand run, the kind of day that never feels like a turning point until afterward. They took the back service lane behind a large shopping center because it was quicker and because the donation drop sometimes had usable household items left beside it. One dumpster looks unusual, full, packed high with flattened cardboard and packing foam like a store had cleared out a backroom fast. Down low in the pile sat the rolls, 5 lined up, a 6th wedged behind them, each one wrapped tighter than you wrap something you plan to throw away. The twine knots looked older, but the plastic looked newer, like they'd been wrapped twice. Glenn climbed onto the metal bar carefully, tested one roll, and felt it heavy, wrong density again. Marla didn't argue. She opened the trunk and laid an old blanket down. She already knew they were past the point of pretending this was nothing. They worked quietly and efficiently, not frantic, just focused. One roll came out, then another, each one awkward and heavier than it should have been. By the fourth, the trunk sat lower, the fifths barely fit. The sixth had to go across the back seat, and Glenn hated how that looked, even though they weren't hiding anything. Nobody came out, no one shouted, no one seemed to notice. Still, Glenn's nerves stayed tight because the rolls didn't feel like trash. They felt handled, preserved, and discarded with the intention, and he couldn't shake the thought that someone wanted them gone without anyone asking questions. At home, they didn't unroll anything in the driveway. They carried all 6 rolls into the garage and shut the door. Under their overhead bulb, the twine looked frayed in spots, but the plastic was still sealed tight in others, like the rolls had been reopened and rewrapped before they hit the dumpster. Glenn cut the knot on the smallest roll first, slow and careful, because if it was just carpet, fine, but if it wasn't, he didn't want to slice into whatever was inside. Marla peeled back the plastic and pressed her palm along the roll to flatten it, then stopped, so suddenly her fingers curled. She wasn't feeling rock padding anymore, she was feeling something stiff and flat, like a board under fabric. Glenn unrolled a few more inches, and a hard corner slid into view, canvas stretched tight over a wooden frame. They froze, staring at that one exposed edge. Because now the question wasn't, can we sell some rocks? The question was why someone hid paintings inside 6 carpets and dumped them like garbage, and what they were about to uncover if they kept unrolling. For a full minute, they didn't move. Glenn kept the roll pinned with his hands like it might snap back and erase what they'd seen. Marla stared at canvas corner as if her brain refused to accept the shape. Painting didn't belong inside rocks. Paintings belonged on walls, in offices, in places with security and bright lighting, not wrapped in plastic and twine like contraband. Glenn's first instinct was simple and old-fashioned: put it back, drive it all back, pretend the garage never held any of this. Then he pictured Marla's sister's rehab deposit and the thin line of money they had left, and he felt the same tight pressure he'd felt since spring started: responsibility with no room to breathe. They didn't rush, they made rules: no photos online, no showing neighbors, no let's see how much it worth fantasies. They cleared a clean space on the garage floor, laid down old sheets, and unrolled the first carpet slowly, inch by inch, like they were disarming something. The canvases inside wasn't just one corner, it was a full-frame piece, face protected by the carpet's thickness, edges wrapped with the cardboard to keep it from rubbing. Marla's throat tightened. Somebody had taken time to protect it. Somebody had wanted it hidden, not destroyed. The second carpet was heavier. When they cut the twine and peeled back the plastic, Marla saw another frame edge almost immediately. Different size, same careful padding, same packed not dumped filling. The third roll held 2 smaller canvases stacked back to back with a towel between them. By the fourth roll, Glenn stopped calling them rocks. In his head, these were shipping tubes without tubes, a cheap disguise using bulk and embarrassment. Most people won't drag carpets out of a dumpster, and the ones who do usually won't keep unrolling once they see something that feels too serious. Glenn and Marla realized that might have been the whole point. They worked through all 6. 5 paintings total, 3 large, 2 smaller, each one wrapped like someone had done it before. The 6th roll wasn't a painting at all, it was the thing that made Marla sit down hard on a plastic storage bin, a flat envelope taped to the inside of the carpet wrap, sealed in a freezer bag. Inside were photocopied pages and a handwritten note in shaky block letters: "If you found this, please don't trash it. I ran out of time." There was no sob story, no dramatic confession, just a few facts: an estate clean-out, a storage deadline, and the name of a small local appraisal office in Savannah with the words "Ask for Mr. Kane" underlined twice. That note changed the air in the garage. It didn't erase the fear, but it gave them a direction that wasn't greed. Glenn could live with that. The next day, they loaded the paintings back into the carpets exactly as they found them, drove across town in daylight, and carried the rolls into the appraiser's office like they were delivering something fragile and borrowed. They didn't brag, they told the truth. Found, discarded, wrapped, protected, and they wanted to handle it the right way. The appraiser didn't smile big or make promises. He got quiet, put on gloves, and examined the canvases the way a mechanic listens to an engine close. Patient, respectful. When he finally looked up, and his voice stayed calm, but the words hit like the door opening. These are not decorative prints, these are real works, and they were treated like someone knew that. The process took weeks, not hours. Authentication, condition reports, paperwork, a safe consignment route that kept their names out of the gossip and kept everything documented. Glenn and Marla didn't get movie rich, but they got something that felt even better at their age: stability. They paid the rehab deposit without draining themselves to zero. They fixed the one repair in the house they kept postponing. They rebuilt their emergency cushion so the next surprise wouldn't feel like a threat. And Glenn did one small stubborn thing for his own spirit. He framed a cheap photo print of one of those paintings, just an image, not the original, and hung it on the hallway as a reminder that careful choices can still lead to good outcomes. Years later, they didn't talk about it like a wild adventure, they talked about it like a lesson spring taught them the hard way. Sometimes help shows up wrapped in embarrassment, and the only way it truly helps is if you stay calm, stay quiet, and do it clean. The appraiser, Mr. Kane, didn't treat Glenn and Marla like lucky dumpster divers. He treated them like people who were suddenly holding responsibility. He documented everything on intake, photographed each canvas, logged the condition, and wrote a short statement describing how they arrived, wrapped inside carpet rolls, protected with cardboard, and discarded behind a shopping center. Then he did one thing that made Marla finally breathe. He told them there was a clean path forward that didn't require drama. If the works were authentic, they could be sold through a regional auction, partner with the proper paperwork, and if they weren't, he could still help them place them with a local collector market without anyone getting burned. The next few weeks were slow and tense, in the quiet way older people understand, not suspenseful like a movie, not heavy like waiting for medical results. Kane brought in a second opinion from a specialist in Atlanta, then a conservator to confirm the materials in age. The results came back conservative but clear. The paintings were original works by a mid-level American artist with a real collector base, valuable, but not headline valuable, which was exactly what kept the situation safe. No news, no public frenzy, no strangers knocking at their door, just documentation, estimates, and a plan that protected them while still giving them a fair shot. When the consignment agreement arrived, Glenn read every line twice and asked questions, like a man who had spent his whole life avoiding traps. Marla tracked dates and fees in her notebook and insisted they keep copies of everything, including the handwritten note they'd found in a carpet wrap. They followed the process step by step: transport under insurance, condition checks, listing, and timed sale. It wasn't fast money, it was careful money, and when the first sale closed, the number wasn't a fantasy, but it hit them like relief, enough to pay Marla's sister rehab deposit without emptying their own cushion. The next sales followed, spaced out, steady, and by the end, they had something they hadn't felt since before spring tightened around them: options. They used the money the way people with good sense use money when they have been scared for too long. They rebuilt their emergency fund, they paid off the small medical balance they'd been juggling. They fixed the house repair Glenn had been postponing because it could wait, even though it never really could. The strangest part was how the fear faded. The garage stopped feeling like a secret room, the house stopped feeling like it was one surprise away from cracking. Glenn went back to doing small fixes because he liked feeling useful, not because he was desperate. Marla stopped carrying that tight look in her shoulders. One afternoon, weeks after the last payment cleared, they drove back past the same shopping center and didn't even turn into the service lane. They didn't need to. They'd gotten what they needed and they'd handle it without losing themselves. They never found the person who wrote the note. Maybe that was the point. The note wasn't asking for a reward, it was asking for decency. Glenn and Marla gave the decency back by doing everything clean, no shortcuts, no bragging, no messy choices. And when spring rolled into summer, they looked at each other one quiet evening and realized something they hadn't said out loud. Their lives didn't change because they found art. Their lives changed because, for the first time in months, they weren't living in fear of the next bill. They were steady again, only now steady finally had room to breathe. That's it, that's the story. Please share in the comments your thoughts, your impression about the story, maybe share your own. And if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe.